Compass, North Richland Hills. How you doing? Pretty good, huh? Hey, it's so good to be with you guys. And again, welcome to Compass, where our mission is navigating people to God. Like Luke said, my name is Landon, and I'm so glad that you chose to worship here with us today. And especially if you're here for the first time, we'd love for you to meet us out by that blue banner. Simply give you a gift for showing up today. And it really is good to be in North Richland Hills. It's my first time actually teaching at this campus. And I just started a few months ago as the Central Students Pastor. And all that means is that from time to time, I get a chance to go around and teach different places, but also, and more importantly, get to work with the junior high and high school teams at all of our campuses. So that means that I get to work with the pride of Atlanta, Georgia herself, Danielle Garrett. And I am so, yeah, you can clap for Danielle. I am so impressed with her. The way she connects and relates to students, I think is honestly second to none. And she's building a student ministry, which, by the way, is not an easy thing to do. So if you're a junior high or high school student, or you're the parent of a junior high or high school student, we want you to know that we care about you. We believe that God has great things in store for this place. And we have an event that's going on after church today. It's completely free, and you're invited to come to that if you fit in that student category or you're in a student family. As Luke said, camp is coming up. It's the best thing you could do, and every single Sunday at 11 a.m., we're building a student ministry here, and we want you to know that you can go, so help us pioneer this thing. We need students and we need volunteers to make this great, and we are believing that God is going to do just incredible things because we believe in this generation. We believe in you. And I personally love this campus. Like I said, I get to just go different places and teach different Compass campuses all the time. But when I have a free weekend, my family and I choose to worship here. We moved to this community just a few months ago. We love this place. I've had an honor getting to know Danielle, and it's been an honor and privilege to know Luke and Kathleen Davidson too, and the rest of the staff and the rest of the volunteers, and they work so stinking hard, and I really believe God is pleased with this place right here. So can we give it up to all of the people that make this place what it is? Celebrate them today. Luke, Kathleen, you guys are the best. Thank you so much for leading so well. So I want to open our time today talking about pushing the limit. Maybe you parents have a kid who pushes the limit. If there's a line, it's crossed. If there's rules, they're bent. Maybe you like to push the limit through adventure, all right? You're a daredevil. Bungee jumping excites you, all right? Deep water diving with sharks. Maybe skydiving. I had a friend tell me that I was too scared to skydive, which I am. And but I didn't want them to be right, so I did it anyway. Look and see how scared I was. You can see right there's me about to fall out of the plane, and there's me about halfway down. By the way, I'm really glad that picture was up there. We're having some technical difficulties, so that's why I was looking back there. But you're able to see, that's me skydiving. So if for some reason these screens go out, we can still do this, okay? So pushing the limit, exciting or terrifying? And look, I don't know everybody here, but I feel comfortable to say we all push the limit in at least one area of our life. You know what it is? Driving. Now, I'd never do this because I'm a pastor and I follow all of the rules, obviously. But I've heard that there are drivers out there who will push the speed limit. Like if the sign says 75, they'll go 76, 77, 78, 79. Some of you, 90. And you'll see how fast they can go without getting in trouble. Some of you viewed speed limits as speed suggestions. Again, I'm not saying that I'd ever do this, but what I've heard is that people will choose a speed that's kind of right on the line between I'll get where I want to go as fast as I want to get there, but also not fast enough to get pulled over. Right? So here's the point. No matter what it is, driving, diet, finance, relationships, any life decision, our natural inclination is to live as close to the line as possible. And we make decisions all the time. Like we want to be healthier, but one more drink won't hurt. One more double-stuffed Oreo. Or let's be real, it's 5 more double-stuffed Oreos, okay? We want to be in a better financial position, but one more vacation, one more pair of shoes, one more swipe of the credit card. And those are just a few that I could name. But whatever it is for you, usually the outcome is the same. And here's the problem with the one more state of mind. The math actually doesn't add up because one more rarely adds to anything. In fact, it usually subtracts whatever your hope or goal is begins to fall apart. And I found you don't even have to be a bold person or even a brave person to push the limit. Kids do it all the time, and they're afraid of the dark, right? We just naturally drift towards the line as human beings. The line between legal or illegal, responsible or irresponsible, moral or immoral. I mean, you get the point, right? Human nature says, let's get as close to the line as possible and see what we can get by with without getting in trouble. And the reason we tend to live on the line is because of these assumptions, and there's probably more than 4, but these are the 4 that I've heard and tried to analyze. Let's see if we can get them on the screen. If it's not wrong, well, then it's right. If it's not illegal, then clearly it's permissible. If it's not immoral, it's acceptable. If it's not over the line, it's fine. Now, if you're thinking, Landon, I don't know you that well, but honestly, that sounds okay to me. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't try to live my life that way. And if anybody does, I'm not going to judge them or blame them. I'm not asking you to do that. But if you were honest with yourself for just a moment, like, would you ever set the bar that low for someone you really care about? Your children, a younger sibling, a best friend, would you ever set the bar that low for you? Because if we really lived our lives that way, and I have at different times and seasons in my life, and maybe you have too, the question we're really asking is, how low can I go? Right? It's limbo for life. How close to bad can I get without actually being bad? How close to wrong can I get without actually doing something wrong? Or if you're a Jesus follower or you're a religious person, you come to church, how close to sin can I get without actually sinning? But it doesn't stop there, does it? Before long, we're asking, how far over the line can I get without getting caught or experiencing any negative consequences? How long can I neglect my family, my finances, or my health without feeling the effects? How much can I indulge in addictive behavior without actually becoming addictive? It's a slippery and dangerous slope that begins by asking the wrong question. First, is there anything wrong with this? And that question usually leads to a second question: how did I get myself into this? And as we close this series today, Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets, instead of asking those questions, I want to consider a better one. A question that just might keep you and keep me pushing the limits of good and bad, legal and illegal, healthy and unhealthy. And the way we do that, spoiler alert, is through this little thing called wisdom. And even though that's probably the first time we've said that word or really made that word prominent in this series, wisdom has been an underlying theme in every single week, right? We found it through this verse in Proverbs that so many of you have read and even a few of you have memorized. It says this: the prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. And wisdom, we've seen in this little word called prudent. Okay, prudent means wise. A simple definition of prudent is acting with or showing care and thought for the future. Someone that doesn't push the line or the limit, but abides by wisdom. Someone who understands and asks this question: what is the wise thing for me to do? So today, to finish the series, we get to ask the maturity question. And that may hit home for some of you because you act like a 12-year-old trapped in a 45-year-old body, right? And I didn't create what I'm about to read to you, but I will never forget the first time that I heard it. I was a college student at Texas A&M, Gig'em. Any Aggies in the room? Okay, watching online? All right, and I was trying to prepare for my future. The same stuff every college kid or young adult decides to do. Decide what to do with your life, where to work, who to marry, who to be, right? Those mature questions. And I was listening to this pastor that I really love and respect named Andy Stanley. And he talked about this very subject called wisdom. And he presented this question to use as a filter when making decisions. And he called it the maturity questions. In light of your past experiences, your current circumstances, and your future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for you to do? I'm going to say that again. In light of your past experiences, your current circumstances, and your future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for you to do? And I remember as a 21-year-old, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And instantly, memories started flooding my head of my past experiences. Like every good and dumb decision, every dating relationship, every sports game that I ever learned something, and every conversation with a teacher or a parent. You could go on and on. All of those past experiences that actually influenced and helped determine your current circumstances. Where you live, what you do, how you think about yourself, who you spend time with, maybe what you love and what you dislike. And in turn, that will lead to the last piece, the future. Like your hopes and your dreams, what you hope to accomplish, the person that you hope to be, the legacy, we talked about that, right? You hope to leave, the impact that you make. And the Apostle Paul wrote some incredible words to some early Christians living in Ephesus that I believe can be helpful to us. So if you've got a Bible or Bible app, go ahead and open it up to Ephesians chapter 5. That's where we're going to be today. And Paul gets to the heart of wisdom. Hopefully this will be on the screen with us as well. But we're going to be in Ephesians 5, 15, and 16. So look at what he says starting in verse 15. So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. So I want to just kind of walk through this together this morning, all right? Like a great friend who has our best interest in mind. He says, be careful how you live. Don't act a fool. All right, the world has changed a lot since the first century. Paul likely wrote this on papyrus, and we're reading it on a flat screen TV. But apparently human nature has not. He doesn't have to know us to warn us. Paul knew you don't have to live as close to the line as possible. You don't have to gamble with decisions that compromise your integrity or violate your conscience and potentially damage legacy. Instead, he says, live as someone who is wise. And Paul is saying, when you make decisions today, make the one that's valuable, that honors you and others, that honors God. Remember the question, what is the wise thing to do? And I love what he says next. He says, and make the most of every opportunity. Now, translated from the Greek, the language that this was first written and read in, it says that phrase, make the most, means redeem or ransom every opportunity. Now, what does that mean? I don't know about you, but I really wish that I could go back and redeem and reclaim all the time that I wasted on bad decisions. And here's the truth, whether you're a Christian and you come here every week, or this is your first time and you're not sure about this whole thing, we're all in the I have made bad decisions in my past club. And Paul reminds us that we don't have to stay there. We can redeem all of those poor decisions, all the heartache and dysfunction, all the pain, and use them for good. A lack of wisdom doesn't have to emotionally, spiritually, and relationally bankrupt us anymore. There's another option, because what I've learned, wise decisions will reward you, but unwise decisions will cost you. I want to show you an example, and hopefully this will work. If it doesn't, I'll explain it. But if you're a sports fan, or even regardless if you're a sports fan or not, you probably saw this story a couple weeks ago of a guy named Antonio Brown that literally took off his jersey and he took off his jersey and quit on his team in the middle of the game. He plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so this video was all over the news and it went viral. Okay, now he made a decision that necessarily wasn't morally wrong, but it was probably pretty unwise and definitely cost him something. In fact, look at this. One of the sports writers put together what that decision cost him. He needed 8 more catches to unlock $250,000. Oh, he needed 55 more receiving yards to unlock another $350,000, and he needed 23 more yards to unlock another $350,000. So that decision alone cost him almost $1 million. Now, I don't know if he's sitting at home deep down wishing he could take that back. But the example illustrates a decision that resulted in loss. And I bet everyone in the room, watching online, every person you've ever met has one of those. And you can't change the outcome, the result, right? If you're over 40, there's no DeLorean with the flux capacitor that travels back in time. If you're under 40, you don't understand that reference anyway. But you probably have something you regret in your life. But we can make sure we don't make more cost-heavy decisions by redeeming every opportunity, by simply asking this question when it comes to the decision ahead. What's the wise thing to do? And if you're sitting here today wondering, I would love to do that, but I don't know how. Okay, we'll get to that at the end. And I don't know when. Am I too young? Am I too old? Am I too new in this faith thing? Is it too late? Paul says, make the most of every opportunity. You see, we've been invited to make the most of, to redeem one of our most valuable assets. You know what that is? It's our time, our today, our every opportunity, which means no matter how old you are, no matter what you've done, how new you are to faith, God can use you to make the most of every opportunity, like today, right now. And maybe you caught the very end of that text about evil days, right? It sounds spooky, evil days. So what's that about? Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. And real quick, I love the local church. I've given my life to it. I'm a pastor's kid. I would not be here today without the local church. But one of the things that I think that we can kind of build a bad habit of if we're not careful is dissing on culture. And what I mean by that is just that the world has gone crazy because of politics. A lot of time young people get the blame. Like this generation, things aren't like they used to be. Wherever you or someone else decides to point the finger. And I know, regardless of what you believe, we're all guilty of it at times. And I know there's a lot of crazy, heartbreaking stuff out there. But it's important to notice that when Paul talks about evil days, he precedes it by saying, make the most of every opportunity, which means redeem or ransom. Like he acknowledges that you and I live in this pressure cooker, and instead of complaining and fighting and buying into the woe is me mentality, this world will never be the same. We can be different and make a difference. Like make the most of every opportunity. We can be a beacon of wisdom because you know the one who creates it. Do you know what will happen if you live as a person of wisdom in a world without it? Think about the last time like you saw an ad, you were watching Netflix, you were watching TV, watching a sports game, YouTube, whatever it is, and that ad encouraged you to be careful, wise, or self-controlled. No, it's let's make the decision for you right now. What feels good? What serves you? What if you were different? And not only made wise decisions, but could be people of wisdom. Can you imagine the ministry opportunity? You know who I want to spend my time with? 28-year-old guy, just trying to figure it out. People of wisdom. People that can help me learn and be better, learn from their mistakes so I don't have to make them. You know who the high school kid who fails classes, smokes pot, in and out of the principal's office, you know what he needs? You know what she needs? Not somebody that reminds him or her how much the world has changed. No, they need someone who can model wisdom for them. Tell them there's a different way, that God does have a plan for their future, and it can be a good one. You know what a single mom needs? An older single mom who's been there before, who understands. You know who you need? Someone who can remind you, like when you get caught up in the mess, that God has a better future for you. And when he talks about evil days, it doesn't sound spooky or talk down, but to remind us that time is short. And we're not going to get much help from like out there, but you can be a help to someone in this place right now. Redeem, ransom, make the most of every opportunity. So what if you were different? And you dedicated yourself to be a person of wisdom so you could help not only you, but everyone you meet. Can you imagine the impact that this campus would have in this city, in this state, in this time? What if you lived your life through the lens, in light of my past experience, my current circumstances, and my future hopes and dreams? What is the wise thing for me to do? So to go a little deeper here, I want to spend a few minutes working through these three areas. Past experiences. Often our past experiences are only for regret. They're painful reminders. What if you didn't have to live with that burden of guilt and regret? What if you learned from them instead of being haunted by them? We've probably all had something in our life we didn't like. And if we're not careful, like we can start to find ourselves repeating that same vicious cycle of sorts over and over and over again. An addiction, a relationship, whatever it is. And there's this sort of gross but painfully true verse in Proverbs. It's Proverbs 26:11. It says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness. When we fail to pay attention to what got us into trouble in the first place, so often we can end up right back to where we started, like a dog returning to, which, by the way, I'm pro-dog, but that is disgusting, and that is one of the grossest things that they do, okay? And so is going back to the exact same pattern of stuff, every addiction, every heartache, every breakup that got us into trouble in the first place. So here's what I want to challenge you to do when faced with a decision. In light of my past experience, what's the wise thing for me to do? What's the decision that's going to get you out of that vicious repeating cycle, that's going to lead you into a new and better future, that's going to redeem or ransom the past? Like, don't let it ransom you. And that leads us to today, right now, January 30th, 2021. In light of my current circumstances or state of mind, what's the wise thing to do? And here's the truth. Only you and God really know where you are. You know the details of the present. And then there's that state of mind part. What's that mean? Well, how's your thought life? And look, I'm not trying to be self-helpy. Like, it's more than that. Like, do your thoughts honor God? Are they consistent with who he says you are and who he is in his word? Like, I found it's really hard to make a sound decision when those two things are compromised. So in light of current circumstances or your state of mind, what's the wise thing to do? Maybe you just got out of a relationship. Like, would it be wrong to jump into another one? The answer to that is no. But in light of recent circumstances in your state of mind, what's the wise thing to do? Maybe you've got a hurt, a habit, a hang-up, and you know there's a certain environment that is not good for you. And in light of recent circumstances and emotions, what's the wise thing for you to do? I don't know you, but you know, and God knows. And then there's that third perspective, the future. In light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? You know, one of the hardest things I think for us all, the witnesses, when people that we really care about make decisions that undermine their own future, right? It's heartbreaking to watch individuals or couples make decisions that undermine their relationships. And I'm not there yet. My kid, my daughter Hallie, is only 8 months old. But when I look into her eyes, sometimes my mind jumps to a moment, and I know this is going to happen because she's a human being, where inevitably, and probably in her teenage years, because that's how I spend most of my time with, hanging out with teenage students, she makes a decision that I know is going to undermine who she is. Something that will or could follow her. And then there's like my side. Like, what decision could I make as a dad that could unintentionally divide our relationship? Some of you have had that happen before. And look, none of us like to witness that in others. Like, we can see it coming and it almost makes us physically cringe. But do you know what's interesting? We oftentimes don't have that same kind of radar with us, with our future, with our hopes and dreams. So why is it that I'm not okay with it if it's somebody else, but I seem to allow a blind spot in my own life? And chances are pretty good. Like, you've got an idea of what your preferred future looks like. The challenge, though, comes because life happens, and heartache happens, and sickness happens, and life is hard on dreams, and the deck always seems to be stacked against us, and there's always a headwind. And if we aren't careful, we can contribute to the demise of what we hope for in the future. Right? We never wake up and say, today I plan to undermine my own future. The problem is we just don't plan not to. And as a student pastor, my job is to point students to Jesus. And one of the more effective ways to get them there is to get them to realize that God has a plan for their life. And it's a really good one. And those big dreams and big hopes can be blessed by God for God. And they need to intentionally put in place guardrails and guidelines and truths from Scripture to make sure they don't undermine or undercut the plan that God has for them, to intentionally plan not with God's help, to undermine His purpose and passion for them. You know, I was kind of trying to figure out how to end this thing. And I'm kind of a storyteller, preacher, teacher guy. That's just how I learn best, and so I found that's the best way to teach people. And I haven't told one yet, so I'm going to close with one that just happened to me last week to kind of close out this thing and wrap a bow on this. I was at our Roanoke student ministry on Wednesday night, and I was getting ready to teach, and I was sitting in the back row, and this kid comes in, and he was wearing like army camouflage head to toe, which I thought was an interesting fashion choice, but you know, that's up to him. And he sits down, and he's got his pizza, and in a way that only a really angsty, angry high school kid can, leans over to me. He has no clue who I am and says, "I don't even want to be here." And I said, "Me either." And we started talking a little bit, found out his name was Maddox. And long story short, I think he'd had a pretty hard life, and he was always at odds with his mom and dad. And I think he'd been arrested a few times and had made some pretty poor decisions. And that night, as I had thought through what I was going to talk about, I was planning to tell the story about a kid named Ramses that I met when I was doing a youth ministry in California. And he reminded me a whole lot of Maddox. So as I was talking to Maddox, I just told him, I said, "Man, I know you don't believe in any of this whole God thing, right? You've told me that many times in the 5 minutes we've sat down together. I'm going to tell a story tonight that I think maybe could help you, of somebody that reminds me a lot of you." So there's Maddox in Roanoke, Texas, right? And then there's Ramses in Anaheim, California. And when I met Ramses, I remember I tried to give him a piece of pizza, and he wouldn't even look me in the eye. There was something going on. I didn't know what it was. But come to find out, as I just kept playing football with this kid, he was a foster care student. He never met his parents. And by the time he was 13, when I met him, he'd been in 8 different foster homes and 14 different group homes. He didn't believe in any of this, right? And there was a time when we were getting ready to go to camp, like what Luke talked about earlier, and I remember telling Ramses, hey, dude, come with us. And he's like, nah, I don't know if I should go, right? And I'd ask him how his week was, and he'd be like, well, I got in a gang shootout this week. And I'd say, me too, of course. It's a joke, all right? But there was this moment when we were at camp, and we started singing this song, Good, Good Father. And I felt this I felt this hand on my shoulder, and it was Ramses. And he's just bawling, crying. And he gives me this big hug, and we go outside and talk, and he says, dude, I have never known my father. I'd never known that I could actually have a family. Now I know. And he got baptized. And it's been unbelievable to see this 13-year-old kid that had the world stacked against him, whose past was really hard, whose current circumstances were still hard, and whose future looked grim. So I tell this story, and I'm thinking about Maddox, who I just met. And I get off the stage, I'm done, and Maddox is the first one that meets me. And he's crying. And he says, Landon, you don't know this, but I'm a foster care kid. And not only did you just change my mind, you changed my life. Look, I didn't do anything but tell the story. That's it. But that kind of future, that kind of change, that kind of hope can be available to you. Those are two young men that have never met each other and probably won't. But their story helped each other because of the miracle that God interwove and the healing that came in their life. So here's the deal. I don't know what happened in your past. I don't know what's going on in your present. I don't know what your plans or dreams are for the future. But I want you to know you can make better decisions and so have fewer regrets, but only if you do it with God's help. You can be a person of wisdom. You can change your mind. You can change what you think about wisdom, not just as something that you could potentially try on for a while, but instead a person to be. And just like Maddox, by changing your mind, you can change your life. I want to pray over you today as we close. There's a scripture I want to read over you, and so if you're comfortable with it, please close your eyes, and I'm almost done. Proverbs 9 says this, wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. If you become wise, you'll be the one to benefit. If you scorn wisdom, you'll be the one to suffer. God, there's a room full of people watching online, and I don't know their story, but you do. So Lord, I just pray that whatever needs to happen today in their heart and their mind and their family, that it would happen. That you'd bring healing and restoration to their soul. That you'd move in their life, that you'd surprise us with how good you are, God. Lord, if there's somebody that doesn't know you today, that wants to know you, and they don't need to stand up, they don't need to raise their hand, they don't need to do anything like that, but God, that they would let us know, let our team know. And maybe they want to even be baptized today, doing baptisms after the 11 o'clock service, that they'd make the bold decision to do that. God, we love you. We pray for wisdom. Thank you for this time. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen. Thanks, everybody.